And we are live, everybody.
From the beautiful post office, I am John Pollock, along with Wai Ting, who his win-loss record has improved because he just beat traffic to get here. Congratulations, Wai.
That might have been the quickest that I've ever come from getting through your door to plugging all this shit in, setting all this stuff up on my computer, and going live.
Where your body language, I am fluent in, and I know to just shut up and let Wai just deal with what he's dealing with. In my head, I just realize how much of a chatterbox I can be, and I just edit myself to be like, wait till he's done. He doesn't want to hear me talk
Save it for the air. But no, you also don't understand because you have street parking at your house.
Oh, and it's the worst. My street is awful.
I usually have incredible luck finding a free spot anytime I have to be here.
Not good today.
But today of all days, I go around one time, I couldn't find one. So I go through, I have to circle back, right? Because it's a one-way.
Yeah, it's terrible.
And then I see a spot at the end of the road, which is pretty far. So you know how when you're driving, I'm going to take my chances that there's going to be a closer spot up closer, and then there wasn't. So I was like, oh shit, I got to go back to get that farther spot. I go back, somebody took that farther spot.
Oh dude, it's war out there.
Now there's nothing. And then so I had to park all the way out there, and of course after I parked on the other side of the street, I walk back and there's a spot wide open in front of your house in the time that it took me to
it's such a frustrating street. There's the combination, as Wai said, it's a one-way. So if you don't find that spot or someone's trailing you, and that's another problem, to try and parallel park and someone's on your ass, and then it's just, it's a frustrating street. Usually there's a spot, but there's times I've done 3-4 laps, and it's just, I'm yelling in my car alone as I'm trying to find a spot. So I just don't drive now. But I'm glad you made it. Wai is furiously telling me that he's stuck in traffic, and then I'm going back complaining about my grammar in my text to him. He's just shut up. I don't care.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I
wrote, if you're late, you're late. And I used the proper use of you are, but then immediately after the incorrect version.
I wasn't completely sure. I wanted to have a comeback, but I didn't want to also text and drive.
No, absolutely. So, I don't encourage that at all.
I was avoiding that.
Welcome to the Hangout, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you. This is what goes on in the moments leading up, and we just let you all in on it. All of you that are tuning in live, we look forward to hearing from you. We will be opening up the phone calls later on in the show. We have lots to get to. We're going to share our thoughts on NXT. We've got week 3 numbers to go through once they drop in about an hour or so. Plus, we have a guest on today's show. We're going to be joined by boxing commentator, analyst Corey Erdman, a former colleague of ours at the Fight Network. We scheduled to have him on to chat about the Tyson Fury angle in WWE, kind of looking at it. Where is this valuable to WWE? What does Tyson Fury get out of this? What has been the boxing community's response to this? But in light of that, we certainly are going to talk to Corey about the passing, a real tragic story involving boxer Patrick Day, who was involved in a fight on Saturday in Chicago that Corey was calling ringside for, and you're probably very familiar about this boxer's name because he died on Wednesday. So we will talk with Corey about that as well. It's one of those stories where you certainly take a step away from the sport and just look at some of the harsh realities, and that extends to mixed martial arts, professional wrestling in a different, more controlled sense, but one where it's sometimes very difficult to look at. So we're looking forward to having Corey on the show, but obviously not under the greatest of circumstances, and something very difficult, I can only imagine, for him having to be there ringside as this knockout occurred. Plus, we will be going through all the latest news, and I guess we can start off with what to me is the biggest story today, and that is the purchase of Stardom by Bushiroad, the parent company of New Japan Pro Wrestling. And Stardom is going to be absorbed under Bushiroad, and they are going to be operated under a subsidiary company of Kicks Road, which also operates a kickboxing company in Japan. And, they held a press conference late Wednesday night in the US and Canada, early Thursday morning in Japan, going over a lot of these details, the keys being that all wrestlers are going to be put under contract. There is going to be television for Stardom in January, small deals, but nonetheless television exposure for them. they're pretty adamant that it's going to be kind of business as usual, which is what you always hear in these kinds of situations. But I think in this case, there's a lot of merit to that, because in a lot of purchases, when you see a big company absorb someone smaller, you expect a lot of redundancy and changes that are going to occur. For me, I really don't see that with Stardom here. There is not anything that they can do to replicate what Stardom provides, and vice versa. That you're hoping, if you're optimistic, that this is going to be added muscle behind Stardom and hopefully get them more stable and out to a wider audience. So at first blush, I think this is a positive for Stardom to have a company the level of Bushiroad operating them now.
I think so too. I mean, excuse me. Stardom to me is like a promotion that's really been on the cusp of like a much, reaching its next level. And what exactly does that mean? For, I would say, a relatively niche product, but fairly niche. But I would still say I think it could probably have a far wider reach than it currently has. Being stuck on Stardom World. And really, I hear you and WH talk about a lot of these shows on Post Pro Res, and I hear other people talk about these. Obviously, we know Kairi Sane, Io Shirai, names that have come out of Stardom that have kind of reached a wider audience. But I think Stardom itself, there's a great demand. Look at the reaction that it received in that New Jersey show that it did this past WrestleMania.
I think it's a very easy product to latch onto. I think they do a very good job with Stardom World, which they have said Stardom World will stay as is. This is not a case of them amalgamating the product. This is not going to be on New Japan World. There's no sign of any crossover between the two. These will be separate entities, but obviously there's that option down the road that, to feature a major Stardom match, you could do that on a New Japan show. If you get to that stage, you could also piggyback off major New Japan events. So you have a Stardom show that weekend as well. There's certainly opportunities there that would make strategic sense, but it seems like they are going to be completely separate at this point. And added to that is sort of just looking at their big plans beyond this year. This began about a year ago. Yahoo Japan had an article on this prior to the press conference that the deal got completed in August between the two sides, and Takaki Kadani, who is the president of Bushiroad, believing that they can increase their revenue. It's about $2 million a year up to 10 over the next 5 years.
2 million American.
2 million American,
yeah,
yes.
Okay.
Whatever the equivalent is in yen. That's what they believe it. So that tells you the perspective of what Stardom is.
Yeah,
like, granted,
small.
it's ridiculous to compare to WWE, but they are making that not even, they're making more than that for an episode of Raw. That's the comparison of what Stardom makes in a year.
Yeah.
But they plan to run 14 events at Korakuen Hall next year, including back-to-back nights in August, major 10th anniversary show in 2021. So I think that's more or less a signal that Stardom is not changing. We have long-term plans, and this is all going to stay in place. And there's some stability for all these performers will have contracts, which I think is a positive for the talent.
For sure. And I think with what's been happening in the UK, I feel like now more than ever, I think people see the benefit of having maybe more of a separation and more of a focus with the people up top, focusing on one specific promotion rather than, let's say New Japan Pro Wrestling taking over, their head office taking over both promotions. And, essentially maybe watering down what has made Stardom so successful up until this point. So I hope this means that it'll achieve a wider audience and that it'll make it more accessible. I don't exactly know how I feel about, the fact that they're saying like, Stardom World is going to stay, I guess, as its own platform. I have no issues with that. I would love it though if there was some type of maybe like discount deal bundle package that you might have for existing New Japan World audiences to perhaps give Stardom a try, something to expand that net.
Yeah, that would be interesting. With New Japan, of course, it is run with TV Asahi, so you have that dynamic to it.
And this is NTV now.
Yeah, so you do have that kind of conflict there. But from like a big picture perspective, like the idea of having both under the same Bushiroad ownership, you would hope that you could make it easier to access Stardom. As someone that doesn't have Stardom World, what do you think are some steps that would gain your interest to watch the product? Is it just simply finding the time to watch it, or are there things that Stardom could do? To be quite
honest with you, the best thing that I think Stardom ever had for somebody like me was that episode of The Wrestlers that Damian Abraham produced. What a great introduction to, the philosophy behind the promotion and really some of the characters behind the promotion. I really do feel like that type of documentary work, in addition, of course, to having great wrestling, like big tournaments that might be a great time to catch people up to speed. That type of a product, I think, is almost essential in trying to grab a new audience.
I think Stardom World, they do a great job with subtitling the promos in English, making it very easy to follow. English commentary might be a goal to have on Stardom World.
Mm-hmm.
W.H. Park and Jojo Remy. I mean, there's multiple options.
Yes.
But it's my pipe dream that W.H. Park calling Japanese wrestling, I think would just, but as W.H. Park, I don't want him like trying to just be any other announcer. I want W.H. Park,
this
unfiltered
guy.
It's like, look at the fucking gear here. This match fucking sucked. I think it'd be the best thing ever, personally. Very selfish on my behalf, but nonetheless, I'm very curious to see what kind of added interest. And it's adding more to the pro wrestling fans' diet. Stardom is, for some, it might be a priority product. I think for the most, it's not. It's something, for me personally, if I can get to a Stardom show, yes, I will.
If people have more access, especially, I think you're very, dedicated niche audience that is we see is willing to pay to go to many different types of shows in North America. If they ran more shows in places like this, I definitely feel like they would do really well.
Yeah. Do you see them trying that again next year, WrestleMania weekend in Florida, doing a Stardom show again?
Without a doubt. Absolutely.
It's interesting to see as well as we're seeing kind of the rollout of WrestleMania shows for next year. Mainly it's the collective again, mm-hmm. but it's like the themed style shows that seem to be what are going to grab people's attention versus your just meat and potatoes wrestling show. That, GCW, that's their area, and they've been very successful with that formula. And I think fans are generally, they know they're getting great wrestling. Now they want cool little twists and turns on regular presentation of shows. Yeah,
and clearly it's been a formula that's been very successful for them. And I again, what's caught my attention as a wrestling fan lately, like I think I already have my fill of great super indies. It feels like almost every promotion is that right now. I kind of want something that has a bit more identity onto itself, whether it be something like Stardom or DDT running a show.
Something that's an experience to go to. Like if going to a live NWA taping would probably be a lot of fun to do just in that setting. Like the setting is a draw for me personally to just go there, and you're now kind of selling people on an experience versus just the matches.
Do you see it getting oversaturated though? I mean, if it hasn't already.
WrestleMania weekend
in particular, maybe these types of gimmicky shows.
Sure, I definitely do. Like I'll say that for a lot of the themed events, they aren't. It's got to be something that hits me, that would really grab my interest. Like the Orange Cassidy show, I could appreciate how fun it looked, but it wasn't something I was dying to go out of my way to see. But for some, there will be, and that's always measuring that. What does the majority want? Are there enough people that want this that make it viable, that those like me that maybe are not going to go see it is offset by, it's a profitable show, and therefore you do it. But I definitely can see there being a tipping point of just too many and people just kind of, wearing out its welcome. Yeah. You want it to be unique. NXT from Wednesday night. Do you want to go through some of our thoughts on this? This was a show packed with matches. We've got 8 matches on this show leading into the main event, which was Pete Dunne and Damian Priest. But this also kicked off with Tommaso Ciampa in his first match back, defeating Angel Garza 319 with the draping DDT, which he is calling Willow's Bell. Mm-hmm. And also saw him... how did you think Ciampa looked here coming back in a remarkable amount of time? Yeah,
it's amazing. He was supposed to be gone for a year, came back in, half that time?
He had the surgery at the beginning of March.
Incredible. I thought his presence was as excellent as ever. I mean, this time coming out as a refreshed baby face, he feels like such a big deal in the confines of this room. And I thought he looked in tremendous shape, as people typically do when they're off the road or at least recovering and rehabbing. And I thought he was great. I don't know how I feel about maybe necessarily beating up a man's tights with a flag on it. That to me was
I thought it came off
heel, too heelish. You know what I mean?
It wasn't even left to be, it's only his pants. It was called out on the commentary. He's disrespecting his heritage. Yeah. And I think especially looks to be a Mexican flag.
Yeah.
I think it comes across very offensive for who is primed to be your top babyface.
If they were just his pants, then yeah, okay, whatever. But the fact that, the announcers were also calling out the fact that
that's what they said about his heritage.
I don't know if that was really, becoming of a babyface, which he seems to be portraying himself as right now.
I didn't like it at all. I think it was really tonally completely off.
But, it was a short match. Good return showcase for Tommaso Ciampa otherwise.
We had the Undisputed Era coming out, and we got a angle of the year. Best USB drive angle way.
I would assume the only USB drive angle of the year.
Oh,
that might be a very specific one.
I'm waiting for maybe Dropbox will be our follow up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You text him a link, I guess.
Yeah, or WeTransfer.
Yeah.
Lots of different
Google
options
Drive,
here.
yeah.
So this drive, after they confronted Ciampa, we got the footage after the break of an angle of a beatdown of Velveteen Dream, although no physicality shown, involving Velveteen Dream, who's just laid out. Had a great line here by Cole saying, "Let Dream sleep on it," as he's laid out. And he's taken out of next week's North American title match, and we'll get a new match out of it later on in this show. But it looks like Dream just kind of written off for the time being. And I don't know what the details are regarding Dream, but this certainly suggested that he's hurt.
Yeah. And if that's the case, I mean, no other reason to really kind of suddenly postpone a match like this, right?
And not do any kind of physicality with him. I thought that was pretty telling. When you see a guy just laid out, it usually means that they can't do anything physical.
If this was just a cover-up for them to pivot to a different match next week for Roderick Strong, I thought it was done relatively well, USB drive and all.
I love the tag match with Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch against Marcel Bartel and Fabian Eichner. Nigel McGuinness, he is one that, when it comes to pronunciations, he's very much on the V train with Walter as opposed to Walter.
Yeah.
And he's just putting all his chips in because we got Alexander Wolf in the corner. Yeah, I was like, I really appreciate this. But we really do need like a media guide to be put out for all wrestling promotions, accurate pronunciations and where we're going. Is it Walter? I'm fine with either. I mean, we don't call Wanderlei.
Yeah.
It's Vanderlei.
But
I mean, at the same time, you're considered an idiot if you call Royce Gracie that. Yes. And yet I've been told it's Royce Gracie. That is the accurate pronunciation. Royce is not a thing. The silent R is not a thing.
Yeah, okay. I mean, usually when it comes to things like this, I leave it up to the actual performer themselves, how what they would prefer. So if anybody ever gets a chance to ask Walter how to pronounce his name, we'd love to know.
I'm fine, though. Alexander Wolf,
Great.
Unknown. He wasn't on TV at this point. He was a tremendous promo, and I just think this guy carries himself great. This was just a really fun tag match, ending with a Doomsday European uppercut delivered by Bartel and pinning Oney Lorcan, who had an awesome firing up comeback as he got the hot tag from Danny Burch. But this was one of my favorite matches between either show. Not match of the night, but up there.
I agree. Pace was incredibly strong, fast, and just really hard-hitting maneuvers every time. I would say any of these four really get into the ring, I'm always somewhat interested. And when you pair the four together, despite like always losing, I think Lorcan and Burch continue to be like favorites that are really bubbling beneath the surface in NXT, and I definitely see them getting a tag title run in the near future. And I think Imperium are fantastic. I certainly like these two. I'm still not really sold on Alexander Wolf, who they haven't really given a ton to just yet. And I don't necessarily know how he really fits in, to be honest, with the group, other than just being a fourth person.
Maybe they need some mentors, and they can form the Wolf Pack. Moving on, another short match. Io Shirai defeating Kaden Carter in 237, top rope moonsault. The issue they're going to have with Io Shirai is this woman is phenomenal, and she was treated like a complete babyface after this match, and she added her name to the list. They're doing the New Japan deal where everyone's talking about becoming a double champion, but in here, it's the target is Shayna Baszler, and who will be the one to knock off the long-standing women's champion? And she wants to add her name to Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair's, and she gets confronted by Ripley, who is going to take on Belair next week and warn Shirai about ever spitting her name out because she'll shut her up too. And at the end of this, like, you really felt like Shirai was positioned as the babyface here, which I hope is not the case, because I think this has been a good turn, but it's going to be very hard to keep the audience negative towards her.
Did you really feel that way? Because
they were all chanting her name after.
Well, that's because it's what the audience wants, but clearly Rhea Ripley is the babyface, I would say.
I took her as like almost like the bully out here, coming here and warning her not to stand up to her.
Yeah, I'm not so sure. I mean, clearly, I think this audience likes Io Shirai. I feel like they will continue at least with her as a heel up until a certain point, and then eventually they will turn her back babyface. But right now, she's getting cheered because she is presenting the attitude of a heel that is, so at this point well liked by this audience. I like the match. Again, a really short match, but I thought Kaden Carter showed some great athleticism and, paired up there with Io Shirai. I thought these two had a really good 2-3 minute matchup. So, unlike New Japan, when they kind of everybody throws their name in the hat, I think this is leading to a multi-man match and not so much who's going to pick each other off before you get to one final challenge at the end.
Yeah, we'll see, because they're going to add even more names to this mix before the end of the show. It's a lot of bodies that they have kind of stacked here in going after Shayna. Regal then announces Dream is out of the match, so next week Strong will defend against the winner of our upcoming match with Keith Lee and Donovan Dijakovic. And they had a very different match than their usual style. This was built around, selective high spots, but Dijakovic wrestling with one arm as he was had the arm beaten down by Lee, who was compared to a mix of Big Van Vader and Shaquille O'Neal.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Because they're all big and I guess Shaq's black.
Accurate. There was we got the picture-in-picture, and let's just say that Pentagon Jr.'s one-arm military press still stands as my pick for leading candidate for picture-in-picture spot of the year, because there was very little going on during this break. Lee splashed the injured arm, kind of similar to like Robbie Eagles, how he sets up the Ron Miller special. And then it led to a Poison Rana by Keith Lee that everyone went insane for. Mm-hmm. And Dijakovic came back trying for a top rope Rana. It's blocked by Lee. And this is after, I'd say, 12, 13 minutes they're having this match. And Roderick Strong runs in, quickly attacks them. Match is thrown out. Morrow is furious. And Regal announces the three-way for next week. I thought, this match was built up a lot. It was a lengthy match. And
they're building it up as a rubber match.
Yeah, as the rubber match. And I just thought the ending and the quick announcement of the three-way, it was almost just one of those way too convenient presentations. I think I was fine with the run-in to set up the three-way, just maybe in a more creative fashion than what we got.
Especially, I think, coming off of AEW Dynamite, where you had finishes to everything. Even the Jack Swagger DQ that we saw, that ultimately gave you a result at the end of it. I think it really kind of shows you maybe the playbook of how they build to matches is going to be different in AEW versus the WWE playbook, which, in NXT, I feel like is executed way better than what you typically see on Raw and SmackDown. But even here, it's DQ leading to a three-way, which I don't have an issue with. It's just, I think when you're trying to set up the promise of this being a rubber match that you're finally going to see some conclusion out of, to have it end, I would say, in a pretty convenient way like this, leaves a bit of a sour taste in people's mouths. And by the time that we're gonna get the match next week, it'll be what, 5 times that we've seen these
this
two
will be
together?
This was the 4th singles match in NXT for them, so next week is it's their first one involving someone else. But yeah,
okay, but the 5th one, and then you're gonna see a 6th one probably at a takeover at some point between these two. Are you going to the well too many times in such a short amount
best
of time?
of 14. Nothing wrong with that.
Right. But it was an okay match. These two have certainly done better. And
this also wasn't designed to be their blowout style of match either.
There were big enough spots that I think anybody who continues to be introduced to them will really want to pay attention the next time they see it. I guess I just don't necessarily know if this needed really to even go this long then, if you're just going to get this finish.
Matt Riddle defeated Bronson Reed after hitting a corkscrew off the top, which was caught into a powerbomb, and then he caught Bronson with the Bro Derek in 303. Not too many people that could get away with the name of this finish, but Riddle is making
I don't know if he really can, to be honest. Yeah. What did you think, Bronson Reed and Matt
It was all right. It was short. They were really trying to present Bronson Reed as a competitive fight here for Matt Riddle, who's pretty much just bouncing back after the loss to Adam Cole. And yeah, he's not really earmarked for anybody. He's not tied to any program at the moment. It's sort of like Adam Cole is in the rearview mirror. And I was kind of curious to see, would this guy be a potential call-up, and obviously not. And they fist bumped before and after the match, so we'll see what they go next with Riddle. But
A lot of potential.
sorry, just a rehab match.
Yeah. I don't love Matt Riddle, to be honest with you. I've seen him in great matches, but like, there's just something about his particular style that, strangely enough, being like an MMA fighter, I find somewhat unrealistic. It's just like, to me, just there's something that I don't necessarily love about maybe, I don't know if it's just the pacing or just, it just feels like, he goes just from move to move to move to move to move without that much in between. And maybe that's just my particular preference, but I felt like this was kind of one of those matches where it's like, that didn't do a whole lot for me.
I'm just imagining this guy's transformation onto the main roster. Vince trying to get this guy just sitting down with
I would
Matt Riddle.
kind of love to see it, actually.
Would he be telling riddles in his insert promos?
I think he would be more of a modern day RVD, like, oh, whatever, man. Whatever, bro.
He'd be scripted like Robin on the old 60s series with Batman. What has two beaks but never flies?
Oh, God.
Fake superheroes.
Was that Robin?
Dude, I made that off the top of my head. I don't know if that makes any sense.
You were probably looking for the Riddler. Yeah.
But Robin would be the one to answer all the riddles. Like, he would get the riddle and have the answer to it that the Riddler would always pose. So you'd need a green suit for Matt.
Okay.
And who would be his foil in all of this? Well, Ricochet, maybe. He's the superhero. Tegan Nox versus Tainara, who she lost her last name? Is Conchi gone?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's just Tainara. She was compared to Amanda Nunes and Chris Cyborg during this match. And this was Nox's first televised match since coming back. She won with the shiniest wizard in 252. Not so much that you can really get a strong assessment of her coming back, although she did hit a chokeslam, which they noted was done in honor of one of her favorites, Kane. What an influence.
Yeah. I thought it looked ridiculous. Like, I think it's one thing for, like, Hurricane Helms to, like, to do a chokeslam, because it's, like, part of the gimmick. It's like, he's a guy who thinks he's, like, a giant, but I don't know, like, to see Tegan Nox, like, try to pull off the chokeslam to even somebody of her own size, I thought looked a little silly, but okay. I thought in ring it was fine, but I think, what makes it special, of course, is the story that's attached to it. So already you could see Tegan Nox having a great attachment to much of this audience, and I think that'll certainly continue.
So afterwards, Kathy Kelly went to interview Nox about her return. Dakota Kai comes down, gives her a big hug, and then they're interrupted by Shayna Baszler, Jessamine Duke, and Marina Shafir. And Baszler was great. She said that Nox is running out of limbs to rehab. She cut her off before Nox could make her case for a title match and says she hasn't even earned one yet. But they put over that, Dakota Kai and Tegan Nox, they want to throw their names into the hat as well. Of course, Dakota Kai has the long-standing rivalry with Shayna Baszler. So I just thought Baszler was phenomenal here as like the lead bully of all the women and just mocking Nox for her injuries, which are going to get a reaction.
As a bully and, like an ultimate babyface, like Tegan Nox is, like, her story is so incredibly strong as an underdog babyface that I think eventually when they get to that match, it'll be fantastic.
Great feature with Finn Balor, that this is all about retracing your steps and going back to determine if you were a positive influence, and he had to find his heart, and next week his future will be his past. I really like this. I thought this was one of the better profiles we've seen of Finn Balor that I don't think they ever really tapped into on Raw over the last years at this point. And it was just, I like the feature. It was simple.
It was good. I almost wish like he did something in ring though, like with the way they kind of built it up. I was kind of hoping that he would like cut a promo in ring to lead up to the thing. But this was still cool. Part of me wonders like how they will treat his return to make it seem like it's not a retread of what he was trying to do. Because I think so often bringing people back to NXT feels like they're going backwards.
Yeah, you have to avoid that with him.
So I think they need something fresh with the character. Maybe a heel turn potentially.
Boa, Killian Dane went 3.5 minutes with Dane winning with 3 Vader bombs and then this half Nelson submission to submit Boa. Just pretty standard.
Yep.
And then afterwards, Dane had to be separated as Pete Dunne's walking out for the main event. And Pete Dunne, Damian Priest, they went 15 minutes here, and a lot of great action from the two. Priest was hitting these up kicks, which Morrow got to compare to Nico Price, who just knocked out James Vick last weekend with an up kick, just brutal knockout. And there was a top rope Frankensteiner and chokeslam that Dunn kicked out of. They're trading strikes. Audience is going nuts for all of this. With 5 minutes left in the show, the crowd's chanting "Fight Forever." Moonsault is delivered onto Priest's knees, and then Dunn reverts back to the fingers. And then in the end, they get into the corner. Jessica Carr gets caught up in between them, and as she's moving out of the way, her back is turned. I like this, like attention, like it was a logical reason for her to miss this. And Priest hit a low blow and the Reckoning to pin Dunn 14:57.
Good match.
Very good match.
Really good match. Both of them able to showcase a lot. I mean, this is probably Priest's biggest match since he's been on NXT, right? Has he had a
for Damian Priest, definitely.
Yeah. So, I mean, I thought it was cool. I think going the more heel route with him, again, it makes him stand out amongst the rest, because it feels like they have so many baby faces from the indie scene lately. So, I think it's a good move for him. I look forward to seeing what more he can do, because I thought he looked pretty impressive here.
Overall thoughts on NXT this week?
It was a good show, but again, I can't help but maybe compare it to the big show that it had maybe 2 weeks ago, and how, again, this felt like an episode of NXT that felt more like your old editions of NXT, which is not to say that it's a bad thing. Again, I feel like this was an NXT that is now staying the course and not necessarily doing too much to counter what AEW is doing. And I think eventually there's sowing some seeds here, at least for storytelling, even teasing something between Gargano and Ciampa. Or at least an interaction between the two, setting the seeds for Finn Balor. They had Pete Dunne and Killian Dane doing something here, Tegan Nox and Shayna. So I think a lot of interesting stories that they're setting up for, but not necessarily this episode alone will make you go, wow, you have to see it.
Yeah, it seems like the philosophy is, let's plant the seeds, and over the long term, we'll get payoffs to stuff. Mm-hmm. We're not going to hotshot things every single week. It's TakeOver is our destination a month from now, and it seems like they're laying the groundwork for a lot of those big programs, but we're not just going to shotgun something for next week that's not going to have the same level of impact if we cut out all the build for it. Mm-hmm. So I think NXT, it's probably been sobering the last few weeks to realize, okay, this is where we are, and how are we going to improve upon this and not be so swayed by what's happening with AEW, because I think it's going to be consistent, the viewership outcomes each week, and NXT, it's going to be more of a long-term project. But I also watched this show, and it seems like if they got some really big hot star that just got inserted into all of this, that creates a lot of buzz, you could see a lot of intrigue here. The foundation is there for this show. I still feel the 2 hours, I feel it on this show around, I would say, midway into that second hour. Mm-hmm. It's you start to feel it, and I don't so much get that with AEW.
How much of that has to do, you think, with the setting of the show versus how it's put together? What exactly is causing that for you?
I think it's a lot. Again, this is 8 matches. You don't have necessarily, you're watching this, and clearly they have their people in place. I just think AEW's doing the atmosphere. It's good in Full Sail. It's hardly this is a dead crowd or anything like that. But sometimes it's just there's a lot of short matches here, and 2 hours of that can get tiresome, I'd say. We got the big main event, but that was, and your crossover match with Lee and Dijakovic. So those were your two big matches, and the rest it's a lot of showcases, and not everybody is over to the same degree as others on this show.
We want to get to your thoughts as well on both AEW and NXT and anything else this week. But first, I think we're going to take a short, break from talking about this current Wednesday Night War stuff because we'll be talking to Corey Erdman.
Yeah, we're going to be welcoming on Corey Erdman momentarily. While Wai contacts him, we are going to. Is he ready?
Probably shortly. Yeah. Do you want to kind of set it up?
Yeah, so we wanted to have Corey on initially just to chat a bit about Tyson Fury and his involvement with the Crown Jewel event, and kind of the impetus behind Tyson Fury coming over to WWE. But we'd be remiss to not address the very tragic story involving boxer Patrick Day, who was involved in a fight this past Saturday in Chicago and suffered a knockout loss in this fight. And passed away tragically on Wednesday. Corey Erdman was there in Chicago calling this fight. And Corey, obviously not the greatest of circumstances to be talking about, but I can't imagine this situation for you. Can you just tell us a bit about Saturday night, the ending to that fight, and what was known in the immediate aftermath after the show, and you being kind of in real time having to call this show and then deal with the aftermath once that show was over?
Yeah, so I mean, just to clarify, I mean, I was ringside. You know, I was 18 feet away from where Patrick Day ultimately passed away, but I was working in a production capacity.
Oh,
so
I'm sorry.
But nonetheless, I mean, I didn't have to work in a narrative capacity in this sense, but I was there nonetheless, and obviously getting the information as it was coming, and I was there for the first time to witness a ring tragedy with my two eyes in live. And you know, you read about these and you see them on television, and you can't prepare yourself, even knowing full well what the dangers of the sport of boxing are. You really can't prepare yourself for witnessing something like that, and the attachment that you feel to it, and how you'll feel coming out of it. But as far as what we knew at the moment, I mean, Patrick Day was facing Charles Conwell in what was a fight that Conwell was winning, but was very much competitive in the middle rounds. This wasn't a one-sided beatdown by any means. But in the 10th round, Conwell finally got the best of him and dropped him with a right hand and a left hook. Day went down very hard, and almost immediately you realize that this was something serious, and he was given oxygen and taken out of the ring and out of the arena immediately. And before the broadcast was even over, so I would say within about an hour, we had found out that he had not woken up, had seized on the way to the hospital, and when we went to bed that night, Patrick Day was still in a coma, and 4 days later he's passed away. So not something I ever looked forward to, and I'm sure we'll get into it, but really, I mean, you find yourself kind of questioning everything about the sport and what you do for a living, as you know, I'm sure people in pro wrestling have at different points, whether it be for ring deaths or performers who have passed away because of the vigors of wrestling. You really start questioning what it is that we're watching, what it is that we're involved with, and given the incalculable cost of a human life, you find it difficult to come to the conclusion that it is a net positive. But in order to continue on, you kind of have to.
Now, I didn't see the fight. Was he able to get to the back under his own power? Was it evident immediately that there was immediate concern, or was that only after the fact that the severity of this knockout was realized?
No, I mean, this was immediate concern. Patrick Day never got up, but once he was down, he never regained consciousness. It'll stick with me, I'm sure, for the rest of my life, kind of looking into his eyes, basically, as
Wow.
Everything for him stopped. It's so no, I mean, this wasn't one of those circumstances where kind of like after the fact, we've seen it where fighters will kind of collapse in the back or on their way to the back, or this was very much instant, and he wasn't pronounced dead on the scene, but this was a ring death in the most horrifying way that you can imagine, basically.
Being someone that has followed combat sports for as long as you have, Corey, in these situations, like, do you have a clear sense of like how this should be handled in the arena when something of this magnitude happens? Do you believe that you continue on, you hope for the best? I mean, it's not a very easy question to answer, but it's one that has certainly been one that has been asked of professional wrestling, mixed martial arts, professional boxing. I mean, in that moment when this is evident, is the best thing to continue?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough question that I don't know that there's an answer for. I think that maybe the clearer answer would be, if we didn't know that Patrick was going to pass away at that moment. So, we knew that the situation was grave. We knew that he hadn't woken up. Perhaps if there's an instance where someone is instantly and, obviously deceased in the ring, I think that you can make a very fair call to not continue that show. But no one. I mean, the officials are not in the best capacity to continue. Everyone involved in the show is just not ready to continue on if that happened. But if you don't know that the fighter or the performer has passed away, then it's almost morbid to continue on with the assumption that they have. It's very difficult. And again, working on the broadcast end of it, it's a tough line to call because, in my opinion, what happened there, with Patrick Day or insert any performer or fighter who's had something tragic happen to them, that instance kind of has to inform the rest of the broadcast. To me, at the front of your mind for the rest of that broadcast has to be safety of the fighters. I think your tone has to change. It's understandably it should change given what you've watched. But at the same time, you can't talk as if the person has passed away if you don't know that. Their family might be watching, their supporters might be watching. So you still have to have a glimmer of hope. We can't march forward as if they're gone already. So it's just impossible to do it comfortably and to do it perfectly in the instance that we were in on Saturday.
What are the constructive steps that come out of, the worst of tragedies in these examples? Is this a conclusion that this is just a very, very unfortunate reality of what we cover in combat sports? Do you see remedies? Are there lessons to be learned here? These are obviously large discussions, but I think important to have whenever something like this does happen.
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of ways to make boxing at least nominally safer, and a lot of those have been written about, and that includes just heightened medical testing for fighters before and after fights, higher standards for when a man or woman can step in the ring based on their medical or professional past. We can have better medical initiatives ringside. That oxygen tank should be right there next to the canvas at all times. We can just do a better job just be more humane matchmakers just in general. I mean, we see so many, this was not one of those examples, by the way. But we see so many horrific mismatches across the world in all forms of combat sports. And, they're all tragedies waiting to happen because of the physical difference between the competitors and the skill difference between the competitors. I mean, there are things that I think we can do to minimize the frequency of these tragedies. But I think what makes this such a difficult thing to grasp and difficult to provide answers to in the moment is that all of these passings that we've had recently, and that being Day and Maxim Dadashev and Santion in Argentina, that's 3 ring deaths basically over the last 3 months almost. These weren't mismatches, and in fact, these were all very competitive and I think well-matched fights. And that's what makes this difficult to grasp, is that the sport in its current construct, with athletes getting bigger and stronger and faster, is just unbelievably dangerous and perilous. And as big and strong as these bodies are getting as the years go on, your brain, your skull doesn't get any stronger. So these fighters, year after year, as they get better as athletes, are also in graver danger. And so, I mean, unless we start wearing helmets, or go back to 3-round bouts with headgear, boxing as it currently exists can only get but so safe.
Yeah, I think that these are all interesting discussions to have. And, when you look at a sport that does have commission oversight, do you feel that enables change, or does it make it difficult to make change when you have to have agreement across the board? And I look more closely at mixed martial arts, where, it's very difficult to initiate change and then see all of these commissions adopt those changes. And you see it from the Association of Boxing Commissions passing the difference in the unified rules, which have now led to the ununified rules in MMA, where a fighter in one state is going to be bound by different rules than the following week's card in another state that may not have adopted the new rules. And it's Like, where do you see the commissions playing a role here? And how hard is it to kind of make broad sweeping changes to the sport that are going to be acknowledged?
Well, it's extremely difficult. I mean, because every state commission can basically make up its own mind. Now, I do think that because these are, because of what these events are, like it's good that there is a governmental body as an oversight, because these are people putting their lives on the line. So there needs to be, a body that someone has to answer to. Like there needs to be, if something goes terribly, terribly wrong, there needs to be legal repercussions. So I can understand why, obviously, there are athletic commissions run by the state. That isn't necessarily the problem. It's again, we always talk about it. Without one governing body overseeing everything, a lot of things can slip through the cracks. And, just anecdotally, in MMA, I know in boxing, there are states that you can go to where you can get away with things that you can't in other states. There are states that you can go to where the rules are known to be lax when it comes to matchmaking, when it comes to checking the gloves or not in the back, when it comes to drug testing. These are all individual entities who can fly their own way. I mean, we're seeing it with the resurgence of bare knuckle boxing.
Sure.
Which I called in North Dakota a couple weeks ago. States are deciding on their own, not just to change the rules of boxing, but to say, hey, let's go back to what boxing was before we decided this was utterly barbaric. So if they can do that, imagine how loose it could get. So, yeah, I mean, of course, it would help if we could finally get one overseeing body, with experts at the top who could help make the safest decisions from top to bottom on each and every card. It could only help.
We are chatting with Corey Erdman, tremendous boxing analyst, commentator. You can read a lot of his work at Boxing Scene, among other places. One of the reasons we wanted to have you on, Corey, was to kind of look at this upcoming match that the WWE is promoting with Tyson Fury and Braun Strowman, and kind of get a sense of how this has been met within the boxing world, and what you see as the incentive beyond just monetarily for Tyson Fury. Like, is this a valuable resource for Tyson Fury to explore, expose himself? How big of a deal is this for Tyson Fury and growing his popularity?
Yeah, quite honestly, I think that Tyson and the sport of boxing, and and I guess then by extension his promoter Top Rank and the network that he appears on, ESPN, I think stand to gain more than the WWE does. I mean, I think that Tyson in the segments that we've seen him in, listen, he's a gifted orator, and he sounds very natural when he's trash talking, which is, as we all know, probably the most difficult thing that wrestlers learn to do, maybe even more so than the inside the ring, which is obviously tremendously difficult. But sounding natural when you're trying to sound like a tough guy can be problematic, and Tyson does it very well. But again, I mean, just looking at the raw numbers, even if ratings are going down on WWE programming, I mean, if you're getting 2.5 million viewers, let's say, that's way more than any boxing broadcast gets right now. I mean, pay-per-view or streaming or on cable. I mean, nothing has touched that number in quite some time that isn't Mayweather-McGregor, basically. And I would stand to guess that the majority of those people are not the people who are watching boxing on a weekly basis. That somewhere between 400,000 and 1.2 million, let's say, that are the built-in boxing audience. Most of the people watching Raw and SmackDown aren't those people. So, I mean, if you even gain whatever, I mean, if you gain 50,000 people that have an interest in Tyson Fury and then are curious enough to just turn on ESPN next time he fights, or slow down, or throw down a couple bucks to buy the pay-per-view, I mean, that's a big gain for Fury and just for his notoriety in general.
What's the reaction been like amongst boxing circles, Corey, if there has been any, to Tyson Fury being a part of the WWE?
I mean, I think it falls kind of on either side of how you feel about Tyson Fury. I mean, he's a very polarizing figure for some very serious reasons, and others just kind of pertaining to taste. I mean, without getting into it, I mean, Tyson has said and done a lot of things that are very rightfully offensive to a lot of people that he's never really atoned for. I think we kind of heap it on to the same pile where, you know, we say, okay, well, he's recovering from mental illness and he battled addictions and he's beaten all that. And, you know, we kind of think of those statements that he's made in the past as maybe a part of that era. But still, he's never really apologized for some of those things that he said. So there are a lot of people who just don't like Tyson Fury. And so they're not going to like this particular publicity stunt by any means. But I think other people, I mean, boxing will do anything to get extra viewers. And I think that people who think about it sensibly only from a business perspective would see it the same way, that this can only help the ratings for boxing on ESPN and can only help Tyson's stature, which in turn, you know, helps any other fighter who's on the card with him when he does fight.
Do you think to that point as well, that this also, beyond just notoriety for Tyson Fury, this is also kind of a image rehabilitation for Tyson Fury among an audience that maybe are not familiar with all those things, and following in the playbook of how Floyd Mayweather, I think to a degree, benefited from that WWE exposure over a decade ago.
Yeah, I think you absolutely could see it that way. Now, I mean, for the most critical of folks, it really doesn't help him at all, because he's going to go fight in Saudi Arabia, which comes with its own level of criticism. Again, rightfully.
Which I'll say, Corey, that, you know, following like much more closer to like the MMA circles, like I haven't seen a whole lot of, you know, condemnation regarding, you know, Cain Velasquez going to do this show, and I would imagine Tyson Fury, and I look at like the wrestling audience as well. Like there is certainly people that are very aware of it and are not happy about it, but it just seems that it's not a bit as big of an issue this year as it was a year ago when the WWE went over there right after the Jamal Khashoggi murder.
Yeah, no, I agree. And again, full disclosure, I work for DAZN, which is a company that is presenting a fight in Saudi Arabia in 2 months from now. So, you know, just putting that out there. I mean, at a certain point, I mean, to your point, the people who cover the sport and are critics of these sports, at a certain point when the match gets in the ring, you have to cover it as a fight and as a match. So, I mean, the criticism will stop at a certain point, and, you know, almost, I mean, most of the big kind of combat figures throughout sports have, you know, done some dealings with some figures that were less than savory. I mean, you know, Muhammad Ali fought in Zaire at the height of the troubles there. He fought in the Philippines at the height of the troubles there. So no one is squeaky clean. When it comes to, I shouldn't say no one, but I mean, like, even the best of people we can think of have definitely fought in some places and made some business choices that were not, you know, 100% morally based.
I cover combat sports. I have no idea what you're talking about, Corey. This is all
yeah, I mean,
brand
listen,
new.
If we're going to go down that road, I don't even know what I'm doing for a living.
Where at January 1st of this year, Corey, on your likely unlikely scale, how high was unlikely of the following scenario of Bob Arum at a WWE press conference talking about working with Vince McMahon on the Snake River Canyon jump with Evel Knievel? You were immediately the person that I thought of watching this press conference, and how I would have loved to have seen your real-time reaction to Bob Arum coming out there, and how this was just seeming going over many people's heads, and just how bizarre this press conference.
I mean, it's just tremendous, and it reminded me of, most people forget this, but like SummerSlam '88 was basically just an infomercial for Sugar Ray Leonard, Donnie Lalonde.
That's right. Yes.
Vince McMahon was one of the promoters of that fight. And basically if you look back at some of the skits leading up to it, you know, it was Bobby Heenan in the gym with Sugar Ray. And it was just a promotional tool for a boxing event that Vince McMahon was promoting. So I guess we've come full circle 30 years later.
Well, it's always great to catch up with you, Corey. I think that you are the authority when it comes to talking about all of these issues within boxing. Tell our listeners, viewers, where they can catch more of Corey Erdman, and I hope at some point we can get you in studio here.
Hey, you know, I don't live too far, so we can definitely make that happen. But if Up until then, as you mentioned, you can read my columns on Boxing Scene every second Monday. I'm one of the lead columnists there. On the air, you can watch me on Broadway Boxing, which is on UFC Fight Pass and SNY for our New York listeners out there. Work behind the scenes for DAZN as well, so if you're not subscribed to DAZN, do that. You can watch boxing there basically every single week, and whenever it is announced, you'll see me on Valor Bare Knuckle episode number 2. We should have a date official for that coming up. We started teasing it on their social media over the last couple of days, so look out for that. But anywhere boxing is, I'm sure I am not too far away.
Corey was also one of the people who helped put together the Omega Man documentary that I believe aired again yesterday.
It aired as the lead-in into Dynamite last night on TSN2.
Yeah, listen, I think Tony Khan needs to send me a finder's fee for this TSN deal. I'm just saying.
Oh, look at that. Hey, any first impressions of Dynamite 3 weeks in? Have you seen most or any of it?
I mean, I've watched all of it, and I've watched the AEW Dark as well. I mean, I've loved it. I mean, and again, we're only a couple weeks in, so it's easy for things to be enjoyable and things for not to get messed up because we're still in the infancy of character development and all these feuds that are going on. But I think the presentation has been crisp. It's been solid. There's no camera shaking. There's not too many crowd reaction shots. All those things that kind of annoy people about the presentation of WWE at this point. Those don't seem to be there, and at the same time that it's feeling fresh, it also feels a little bit nostalgic, with Tony and with JR, both of whom I think are doing a great job. Shivani, I think, has been almost the revelation of the broadcast crew.
Definitely.
I think he's brought a level of legitimacy and kind of a straight down the middle kind of sports coverage call of these matches that I've really enjoyed. So I've loved it so far, and I've also loved the NWA series. That's just been a lot of old school campy fun with some good promos as well. So it's been a good couple of weeks for wrestling.
Did you have a craving for waffles and tire irons after this past Tuesday?
I definitely do. That might have been the segment of the month in pro wrestling.
It was quite something. He is the Swiss Army knife of combat sports analysis, Corey Erdman. I definitely look forward to doing a follow-up with you, Corey, and getting you here in studio because it'd be great to catch up with you. Maybe you can give us a little tease the next time whenever the making of Omega Man can fully be revealed because I think you have many tales to tell one day.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get into that one day.
Thank you so much, Corey. Great to catch up with you, and we'll talk soon.
All right, guys. Take care.
See you, Corey. Thanks, man.
And you can follow him at Corey_Erdman, a man that I once traveled to Russia with.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, 6 years ago at this very time,
wow.
I was in October of 2013, I was in Russia with the Fight Network team, which included Corey Erdman. And
I've heard some stories from that trip that I'm sure you could reveal in a special podcast at some point.
Well, some of them were just I heard secondhand myself while over there, but there was it was maybe the best work trip I've ever been a part of.
We go to our phone lines right now. Sorry,
Yes.
We haven't been able to get to your calls up until this point, but we're going to be going as long as we can.
Yes.
Taking all of your calls. You can search for us, Post Wrestling on Skype or 1732-800-4423. And we first go to our man, Neil. Neil, what is going on?
Hi, guys. Good to speak to you.
Good to speak to you.
What is it with our man in front of my name? John says it all the time.
Our man.
Our man.
Yeah, our man.
Yeah,
Well,
he's our man.
you're our man. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'll take it as a compliment. It's a very Irish saying to say your man when you're talking about somebody. Your man John and your man Way. But listen, first, thanks. A quick congrats on the recent spike in Café membership. It's been pretty noticeable on the Patreon side. Long may it continue.
Thank you very much, and thank you to everybody who's joined us recently.
Yeah, it's a lot of people. You know what you have, John and Way?
What's that?
The biggest prize of all, the Big Mo.
Of course.
We've got it. We're riding it.
Yeah. You have. Outside of the news of the week, although I would like to just say really quickly that I'm really glad to hear Corey mention the controversial aspects of Tyson Fury, particularly on this side of the Atlantic. Mm-hmm. He is a controversial figure. He really has never properly apologized for some of the things he said. It's kind of just, as Corey mentioned, been rolled into well, he had addiction problems and he had mental health problems. I think all of us know people who have had mental health problems or addiction problems, and it didn't turn them into a rampant homophobe or misogynist or anti-Semite, you know. So, I mean, I'm one of those people who doesn't really care for Tyson, and not resent, but slightly think it's a bit distasteful the amount of money he's going to get out of this Saudi Arabia deal.
And you feel like he should have like addressed these comments, which I think is something that is, I think, valid criticism to just simply address and apologize for.
Exactly.
I think you can move on instead of leaving something lingering like this, which it is going to be for those that are familiar with those comments that he's made in the past.
Certainly, and he was absolutely notorious for them here because he was pulled from a BBC Sports Personality of the Year a couple of years ago, which is a really big deal over here. You know, it gets massive viewership. It's on television around Christmas time, and it was around then that he was in the running to begin with, and an awful lot of his very controversial statements came out. But yes, absolutely, John. If he apologised properly, I think most people would go, well, that's in the past now, and I'm very glad he has apologised. It seems to me he's more, you know, interested in the money, and that's why he's not saying these things anymore. But I wonder if I could. It's really beyond the news of the week. I wanted to ask something this week, and it was sparked by you've really quite deliberately, and I'm sure it's deliberate, not really gone into this very much, but you got a big mention on Twitter.
I did
in the past 7 days, and it's Twitter I wanted to talk about or ask you about. Really, wrestling Twitter, the pros and cons. I mean, for me, the pros are, there's a lot of humor out there. People like RJ City, very funny. I know you saw this one way, a guy called Snowboy. Nobody knows him, but I know him. He's a local Irish wrestling scene fan, and he's just a hilarious guy. And he did this video doing an impression of Jimmy Havoc.
Oh
yeah, that was great.
It's really hilarious. You know, I like cutting people. I like killing people, you know, but this guy's from Cork. His accent is nothing like that. It really was quite genius, you know. So, and of course, getting information directly from the source, Mike Bennett this week.
Yeah.
Updates from YouTube, but there's so many cons to it as well.
Mm-hmm.
I have a friend who's in Japan at the moment for the Rugby World Cup. He tweets about wrestling a lot, but he was excoriated for being in Japan and not going to King of Pro Wrestling or even really knowing about it. But he's not a New Japan guy, and that's okay. You know, it's people rip each other on Twitter, and you get ill-informed smart arses. People rip Meltzer all the time for things generally that they've never said, and they're clearly not subscribers to the Observer or listeners to Observer Radio. For you guys, I guess a bugbear is going to be, and I'm guilty of it. I know I've been guilty of this. Too many mentions, too many tags. It's got to be annoying. I've been caught up by accident once or twice in a thread where you just have a mention and suddenly your phone just never ever stops lighting up. So what's your take on it, John? I think you've said before, you know, if you could get off social media or off Twitter, you need it for your job, but if you could get off it, you might. What do you think? And I'll get off the air. Sorry.
All right, thank you, Neil.
Thanks, Neil.
We appreciate it as always. I have a much more kind of simple approach to it these days. I have actually made a lot of changes where I am not spending as much time on it. I've muted a lot of accounts. I have my rule of if certain language is thrown at me or people are harassing, that is my blocks. And then I'm also finding, and maybe some people should try this, I no longer, when I go to sleep, I leave my phone elsewhere. I was like, I no longer want to wake up and be that's my introduction to the day.
What do you use for an alarm?
Well, that is a problem. It is a problem, but I'm also very good at just waking up when I need to. My body is just tuned to wake up at 7:45, 8 in the morning. So
I think that's great advice. I used to do that, but I started to rely on my phone, and I've come to a terrible habit of like checking my phone before and after I wake up. So maybe I'll try that. Try what you suggested, John. But the mute button is, and especially the mute conversation button is a hell of an feature on any social platform. It really should be something that I think is created across the board everywhere. And really, you kind of make your own experience of it. These are great tools for communication, or they could be great tools for terrible bullying, or just negativity, or just racism, or just anything else. It's what you make of it. So if you've had enough, just put it down or delete it for a while and try to control yourself. And that's really it. And you'll be perfectly fine.
I think it's very easy to turn the volume down. It's, if you get sucked into like every day, whatever the Twitter storm is, it's like 24 hours later, this stuff means nothing. And we're on to the next one. Yeah. And it's like, I just kind of tune it out. It's like, I can separate news from noise.
Let's go back to the phone lines. We go to Chris. Chris. From South Ozone Park.
Oh, my God. I heard from multiple people that were instructing me of South Ozone Park and where it is after I showed my not negativity, but just questioning my questions about South Ozone Park.
And Chris, before we talk, can you just turn down the radio on the background?
Yeah, hold on a second.
Yes. Whenever people are calling in, please have the volume turned down, because then we get this awful echo on this side. And no one wants to hear that.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
We can hear you. What's up?
How are you guys doing today?
We're doing great.
I'm just so excited. Just thank you very much for the t-shirt, by the way.
No problem. I'm about to put it into the mail later today. So yeah.
Okay. So I wanted to ask you, what do you guys think of, with AEW and NXT? Do you think NXT can survive on this going against AEW?
Survive? Yes, absolutely. Their viewership is fine. They have a television deal locked in with USA. I am in no concern of NXT's demise on the USA Network, based on these first few weeks.
All right, and thank you guys very much for the t-shirt. I just want to come thank you guys personally, because I just woke up surprised. I just want a t-shirt, so thank you guys very much. And I don't live in South Ozone Park. My mom does, so I left the address over there. I live all the way in Queens Village in New York.
Oh, okay.
Right on. All right. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
So,
thank you a lot for listening.
Ninja Turtle.
Awesome.
Donatello here on the line.
All right. We continue with the phone calls, and I believe we have somebody on the line right now. Caller, what is your name? Oh, wait a second. There we go. I think we have a caller right now. Hey, caller, who? You're in the cafe. What's up?
Oh, hey, what's going on? How are you?
Oh boy, this is not from a gentleman from South Ozone Park. Some other type of ozone thing. What is up, Brandon?
Oh, doing well. How about yourself?
Very well. I understand you were actually in attendance at AEW last night in Philly.
Oh, absolutely, man. I had a great time.
Were you dressed up as Orange Cassidy?
Clementine Cassidy, you mean?
Tangerine
That
Cassidy.
kid was very over, man. He got a big win last night.
Yes, he's 1-0 now.
He's like their Izzy.
He's got a better winning percentage than Pac now. Brandon, are you going to make it?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, is he in the mix now for the title, or?
They didn't clarify if it was a lights out unsanctioned match, if this counts towards any of their records.
Tell us about the live experience, Brandon, of being at AEW.
It was a lit crowd, as the kids would say. It was very electric, very loud, very ruckus too. There was a person that chanted NXT, and he was rightfully put in his place.
Any other?
It was during the eight.
Yeah.
It was during the 8-man tag, which, by the way, is really going to be fun when it comes out.
Tell us about some of the post-match festivities that took place.
Well, there was the Nyla Rose match against I forget who she was.
Leva Bates.
But yeah, that was. Oh yeah, that's right. The librarians didn't get over right in the crowd. They were rightfully put in their place as well. That was an okay match. I wasn't really feeling it. And then the 8-man tag with the Private Party and Shima and T-Hawk versus the Bucks and Cody and that was a really good match. A lot of it's your typical match. A lot of, Dustin Rhodes. That was fun.
Right.
He was over. He was mad.
It sounds like everyone stayed till the end. They were all kind of there beyond the TV. The dark match was a big, people are staying for the dark matches.
Yeah, some people left, but a lot of people stayed for that match, and it was a lot of dives. It was really good though. That was one of my favorite matches of the night.
Anything else on your mind today?
Yeah. Quickly, I was with my friend, and he's not in the immersed in the pro wrestling scene anymore, and he said that he felt like he went back in time to like 1998 with WCW for the show. He said he's into AEW full time now, so that was pretty jarring what he said. But I think a lot of people are going to be. It seemed like a very disenfranchised crowd of pro wrestling fans at the show with WWE. So I think that's they got that going for them for whatever they're doing next for the pay-per-view and stuff like that. I'm thinking about going to that pay-per-view. It sounds like it's going to be a good time. I got a question for you real quick. Sorry for ranting. Why is Gabe Gonzaga fighting Bigfoot Silva in parallel fight? I don't think either of those guys could take a punch. Somebody's gonna get hurt in that fight. Like, what do you think about that, John? That's pretty crazy. And one more question.
Yeah, go ahead.
And one more question real quick. I'm sorry.
Why don't you answer his first question as Brandon tries to remember?
Yeah, I mean, Antonio Silva and Gabriel Gonzaga fighting in any capacity in 2019 does not sound like a tremendous idea. But I think bare knuckle, you're seeing them going for just anyone with a name attached to them, and that's kind of been the MO for them so far. Oh, Brandon is still here. I thought he lost.
I'm sorry. And John, did you see the lineup for that Openweight Grand Prix at Brave FC with Cole Miller and Gilbert Ivel?
I have not seen the lineup, but Gilbert Ivel is in this tournament.
Yeah, Gilbert Ivel, Fedor's brother's in it too, who's also on the bare knuckle roster, and Cole Miller. It's like, what is this, 2002? I think it's pretty crazy. What are your thoughts on that? I'm out of here. Peace.
It makes no sense to me that Cole Miller and Gilbert Ivel are somehow in a tournament together, given their sizes. So that's pretty insane. Are we continuing with phone calls, or do you want to go through any news items?
Yeah, let's take one more from Hansi here. Hansi, you're in the cafe. What's going on?
Hey, what's going on, guys? Hope you're all well. First of all, I just want to say that I like the NXT main event better than the AEW main event, but overall, I thought the AEW show was a lot. I just felt it was a lot better. Even though I was looking forward to the promoted matches that NXT was promoting, because I liked Keith Lee and Dijakovic, and I wanted to see Ciampa's return. Basically, by the way, with Ciampa's return. Out of context, somebody posted Ciampa stomping the Mexican flag, and I'm like, wow, he's supposed to be a good guy, and he's stomping that up. I saw it in context. I mean, it still looked bad anyways, but I was glad it wasn't the flag. It was just his tights. But my question to you guys, and I'll take your answer off, because I know people are calling in. I'm kind of glad that Stardom and Noah kind of rejected WWE's offer. So my question to you guys is, do you think WWE is going to give up and just go, okay, now we're done trying to get a promotion? Or do you think they'll go for the other promotion like DDT and All Japan and all that? And I'll take your guys' answers off the air, right? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hansi.
Yeah, so those have been reported by Dave Meltzer that WWE had been out there trying to buy Stardom, as well as door closing is not going to prevent them from moving forward. And obviously there's a lot of chatter out there about an NXT Japan, which, it seems to be there's smoke to that fire, and we'll see what is officially announced. But that's certainly if they were knocking on the door of Noah, which recently, not too long ago, they sent Kenta over there for the match with Naomichi Marufuji. So obviously they're not doing gestures like that for no reason, and I think that makes sense to know that they were looking at Noah.
Let's go to one more call before we get to our ratings, because I believe they just came out. But caller, what is on your mind in the cafe?
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi, this is Jeff in St. Louis.
Hi,
How
Jeff.
you guys doing?
Hey, very well. What's on your mind?
Well, first I wanted to. I never get to talk about this, so I'm actually First Nation. My mom was from Quebec.
Oh, okay.
We ended up in St. Louis via the military, and I'm a Micmac Indian from Bryan Indian Reserve out that way. So I never get to talk about this with anybody because the United States doesn't have a treaty with our people. So when I tell people here, they just make fun of me. It's a little awkward sometimes.
Oh, wow, awesome, cool, very cool.
Yeah. So the Wednesday night wars are pretty interesting. I'm not. I wasn't really a fan of the Elite before they got their own show. Now I guess you'd say. But as they were building up to it, I feel like they kind of sold us on a lot of things that didn't happen. Like they were really insistent that they were going to get, like healthcare. Because I think WWE will match anything that AEW does, right? I mean, at some point they'll have to adjust because people are really excited about the product, right? And it's clearly more enjoyable than Monday Night Raw or SmackDown for the most part. But so I think that they talked about health insurance, and they're only giving it to the executive vice presidents or people with office jobs and stuff like that. I think they were a little disingenuous about that because I think everyone should have it. In WWE to be more reflective of them being employees and stuff like that. So I'm really on board with those kind of things. And I really and if this doesn't work out, I really think that they should have fought the Bucks, Cody, and Omega really should have fought for a percentage of ownership. Am I wrong in this thinking or?
No, not at all. I mean, and there's nothing to suggest that they didn't try to fight for things like that. But you can't put a company together with this type of, I guess, I don't know, volume of talent and production without the person putting the money into it. And without Tony Khan, like, he really was the essential part of this puzzle. So I think ultimately he would have final say about who gets ownership and who doesn't. And if you're talent, I would assume from what we hear, they received great offers from the WWE, but they were more enticed by this. I would say probably from a combination of like investment perspective, like, or maybe this will ultimately work into a role that might ultimately be more lucrative than what they would make in the WWE. But also I would say from a creative and just I don't know, personal fulfillment standpoint, I think this might offer more than what they would have under the jurisdiction of somebody else creating storylines for them, writing, telling the style of matches that they have to wrestle. So it's factors like that. But I also wouldn't doubt that they didn't try to fight for ownership either, at least to start.
Yeah, I just think with they had the show, the Being the Elite, all out showed that clearly they're a draw, right? I mean,
yes.
That's not even arguable at this point. So I mean, I know you have a billionaire owner in Shad Khan almost bought the Rams when they were in St. Louis, so we're familiar with them here. It just seems like that would I don't know, maybe like you said, maybe we don't know what happened behind the scenes, but it certainly seems disappointing that they didn't get those things for more people, I guess, from my point of view. It's really like their hardcore push before the brand started and they kind of laid everything out, and when Tony Khan was asked about it, he's like, well, Moxley has insurance through his wife. He probably has a SAG card too because he made that awful WWE film. And that my have incredible insurance,
right,
that come with it when you pay your dues or whatever it is. So I don't know. I like the show from what I've seen of it. I'm more of an NXT guy. I like the old school throwback. And I really wish Wrestling at the Chase was on the WWE network because, man, that was a hell of a show when it was on here locally, on Channel 11 at like 11 o'clock at night.
Actually, I believe it's on, it might be on GCW or Impact Plus.
Yes,
Wrestling at the Chase.
yeah, because WWE doesn't own those.
Yeah, so if you really wanted to see that.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you very much for your call. We got to get to these numbers, and thank you to everybody for trying to call in. We appreciate it. Sorry we couldn't make more time. Please call back in next week.
All right, so last night we had AEW doing 1,014,000 viewers, which is down 4,000 viewers from last week, so very tiny drop.
4,000, but I mean, if you include the True TV, then how much?
Last week, that's not including True TV.
Right, so if we included True TV, how much of a drop is this?
Then that would be a drop because it did 122,000 on True TV, so a bigger drop if you include both of those. NXT did 714,000 viewers, down from 790 last week. Among people 18 to 49, this week AEW did a 0.44, NXT did a 0.20. That's compared to a 0.46 and 0.22 respectively last week. So a larger drop for NXT if you don't include the True TV numbers from last week, but both down varying degrees from last week.
Yeah, down. So a continued decrease for both shows, including in 18 to 49. So, what do you make of that? Do you think that there's an initial interest that's kind of been waning? Do you think that they're doing not a good enough job of retaining people that are giving it a shot?
I would say it's not a gigantic disappointment, but a moderate one for AEW, given the sense that this was Chris Jericho wrestling on TV for a promoted title match that you had all week. And for both shows, we had no baseball competition last night because the game got moved to tonight, the Yankees game. So therefore, I would have hoped that you would have seen a bit of a bump for both shows without that sports competition. And instead, it was a moderate drop for each.
Right.
So those are your viewership figures. We also have just some quick news and notes before we get out of here. SmackDown, they have announced Shinsuke Nakamura defending the Intercontinental title against Roman Reigns will be taking place tomorrow night from Indianapolis, Indiana. I heard from someone that you can expect some SmackDown matches to be promoted on tonight's Thursday Night Football broadcast, which is a great crossover that you have with Fox, and that might be something that they're doing more of. So there will be some matches promoted on tonight's broadcast. We also have Luchasaurus that we mentioned. He's got a hamstring injury, and apparently he injured it 2 hours before the show, and Marco Stunt had been brought in to do a dark match and ended up getting inserted into the match. So not sure what the timetable is going to look like for Luchasaurus, but unfortunate and happening right ahead of showtime.
That is crazy. Let's go to one more phone call while we can still fit it in before the bottom of the hour. Boyd, what's on your mind?
Hey guys, how you doing?
Very well. Very quickly, Boyd, what's up?
Just a quick one. I just wondered what you thought the AEW guys having a pay-per-view every quarter or every 3 months or so, as opposed to WWE every month. I kind of think it'll help and build storylines a bit slower rather than seeming to rush from one story month to month. So just wondered what your thoughts were on that.
Thank you, Boyd. I think it's a definite benefit, especially when you're starting out. Better to, like we've seen it work for NXT, the intermittent takeovers. I feel like the quality of takeovers, if they were to occur every single month, would drastically decrease. So it gives us time to, get ready for it. Gives them plenty of TV time to get people established. I would say Full Gear seems to be, they're putting a good amount of TV time towards it, and I don't think you really need to peak the next one for several more months. So I think quarterly is a great schedule right now.
Yeah, and it does force you into some long-term booking as opposed to 4-week cycles that you're immediately going back to that well quickly.
And these are expensive pay-per-views. It's not a $10 a month deal that they're doing. So I think for the pocket, for the wallets of a lot of the fans, it's good as well.
All right, that's going to wrap things up. Packed edition of the Café Hangout. A big thank you to Corey Erdman for joining us earlier today. All of your phone calls, we appreciate it greatly. We'll be back on Friday night. All members of the Post Wrestling Cafe will get Rewind to SmackDown Friday night. And then, new Rocky Maivia picture show dropping Saturday.
British Wrestling Experience.
British Wrestling Experience drops tomorrow. New day to look forward to that. Bi-weekly show on the site. And then Sunday night, Bound for Glory review with myself and Nate Milton.
Yeah.
Bye. That's it. We're out. We're out of time. We got to go.
Goodbye.